From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
All right, welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. This is the original podcast about consumption, and we are proud members of the You Run Podcast Network. You can check out all of our previous episodes at yourunpodcast.com, as well as all the other great episodes and shows and stuff at yourunpodcast.com. With me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster podcast, and his name is Sean. And Sean, how the fuck are you doing today?
Hey, buddy, you got a dead cat in there or what?
You know, you're cutting right to the chase, but I love that he has a multiple choice. It's very early Bethesda answers. Like, you just see them going from like blue to red as far as how you should respond.
Fuck you, asshole.
And he chooses violence. We'll come back to that though, because that's the title of this, which you probably clicked on, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you just let things play right into it. I don't know.
Pleasantly surprised.
So it's early May. Sean, what have you been watching in late April leading into early May?
I haven't really watched that much. I wrote down some of the things that I'd watched. And first off, I want to start and just say I started watching the National Geographic Secrets of the Octopus because octopi are pretty fucking cool. So go figure. That's, as of the time of this recording, I think there are 2 episodes out, and I learned really interesting facts about octopi, which I didn't know. I didn't know that they can change it. They can change their color and their texture. Some of them can change their texture, their skin texture, in a fifth of a second and over 140 times in an hour. Didn't know that. Pretty crazy.
It's pretty amazing.
Cool. Isn't that? It's pretty cool. Nature's underwater chameleon.
Nature's T1000.
There you go. Fits right into this episode. I also watched
not this episode. It'd be an episode.
A future episode. It's like tangential to this episode. I also watched The Dark Side of the Ring, Sherry Martel, which I had known about Scary Sherry or Sensational Sherry, depending on who you remember her as. And it's a much darker story than I would have thought. I remembered seeing her through the years, but didn't realize what had happened to her. Like, over time, you just kind of forget about these people and, oh, they're still whatever. She's dead. Spoiler, she's dead. I started watching today, actually. I didn't watch the whole thing. I didn't get through it. But did you ever watch Pirates of Silicon Valley? Came out in like 1999. It's the story of like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and Wozniak and Ballmer and all those Microsoft guys, Paul Allen.
I really like the show Silicon Valley, but I don't. If I watch that, I don't remember it.
It's interesting. Anthony Michael Hall plays Bill Gates and Noah Wyle plays Steve Jobs.
Face value, That's really good casting. I don't know if he pulled it off from an acting standpoint, but as far as the look, like that's, I don't know. I don't know if you can pick a better guy. Yeah, that's well done.
I've only watched about an hour of it. I saw it in 1999. I saw it back then. I could have swore it was a 2-parter, but it's an hour and 30 some odd minute thing, so it's not super long. It's pretty interesting. Steve Jobs seems like he was a pretty big dick, and from all I can tell from what I've read is that it's somewhat accurate. It's like a dramatization of the events that happened from the founding of Apple Computer and Microsoft. So if you're into that, I think it's on Amazon Prime. It might not be available on Amazon Prime in the States for some reason. I don't know.
Did you watch this while you were out traveling in Australia for the afternoon?
Canada. I have VPN, so that's how I watched it. We'll just say that.
Very nice.
Last but not least, again, didn't watch all that much. There's a YouTube channel. I sent you the YouTube channel link, but it's called Wrestle Me. And I sent it when we talked to Sam and Jordana last week. I was talking to Sam about it. And 2 weeks ago, I guess is when we talked to them. I said something about it to Sam, like, hey, I've been watching this thing. It's 2 British guys, and they talk about past wrestling events. So they basically watch old matches on WWE Network, or they'll watch old pay-per-views or whatever, because all that crap's on there. And they talk about things that they found amusing, or maybe old lore about the wrestlers. It's all stuff that's in my wheelhouse, the time frame when I watched it, a lot of it. And they talk about like old British wrestlers too that are hilarious, and some of the shitty rip-off characters that are, somebody from WWE he was from WCW who dressed like Spider-Man. He had a Spider-Man costume, and they made him change the costume because they were going to sue him for copyright infringement and stuff. It's just a funny channel on YouTube. They do a podcast, but it's Patreon exclusive. And I was like, maybe I'll subscribe to the Patreon. It's like $10 a month. Like, I like it, but I'll just watch the videos. Thank you very much. Those are free. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been keeping up on. That's been keeping me busy. What about you?
I've had a weird week with stuff I've watched, so I guess we'll start with the coolest thing that I saw. I don't know if you were aware, but they re-released Alien in theaters this week for its
I had heard.
45th anniversary. So you're aware there's a theater by me that does like replays of old movies on a regular basis that I'll wander down to. And when I saw that was in there, I didn't realize this wasn't part of their replay program, which means the tickets cost 3 times more, but that's fine. I had never seen Alien in the theater, so I kind of jumped at the chance to go do it. So I went into that last Friday night. It's got a little like 10-minute podcast recorded at the beginning of it with the guy directing the new movie, the Evil Dead guy. I can't think of his name. Not Sam Raimi, the new Evil Dead guy. He did 2013. You know, that other guy. Ridley Scott. Yeah, that sounds right.
That other guy.
Yeah. They're bullshitting about the new movie, which I'm in there, and you know, it's all like, well, I really like this about your movie. Ridley Scott be like, it's great.
I don't know shit about your movie.
Right. It's pretty much the vibe that I got. And then he went on like a tangent about Martin Scorsese for like 5 minutes, which was kind of funny too. Like, kind of wish he would have put this at the end of the movie instead of the beginning of the movie, but whatever. Probably a reason why you put it at the front of the movie. But I will say that seeing that movie on a big screen, I mean, we talked about that movie relatively recently, like in the past, probably 6 months now. Was that before Halloween?
I believe it was.
That was before.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Anyway, that movie, it really does hold up very well. And even seeing it on the big screen, which can sometimes like highlight flaws because they're bigger. It really just, it does really well with everything. I don't know how much they remastered it. I don't really care. I had fun with it. It was worth checking out. And I don't know if that's getting like a full run of theater times. Like it seems like there's a lot of showings available for it. If you're a fan of Alien and it's playing near you, you should probably go check it out because it's worth seeing. Then I had a comfort watch. I rewatched Nail Gun Massacre for some reason because that's the primary like movie that I recommend when people say, I just want to get into horror movies. What should I watch? I always say Nail Gun Massacre because that is the bar in so many ways. But that was just fun and had nail guns and massacres, as you would expect.
Lived up to its title.
Yeah, well, you know, it's pure schlock and like grindhouse shit, but whatever. Can't really be mad about that. That's usually something we approve of. Past that, I watched I don't know how old either of these are, but I watched a documentary on Evel Knievel, which was called Being Evil, which basically went through his whole life. Apparently, Johnny Knoxville is somehow an expert on Evel Knievel, which I had no reason to doubt that, but he's like the primary person they're like interviewing in this. I want to say that was on Amazon or Hulu, something like that. But for like an hour and a half documentary that covers the majority of this guy's life, they did a pretty good job. Like, I don't really feel like I missed all that much with it. And I had no idea that he beat the shit out of a dude with a baseball bat, which is kind of fun. Like, that's what caused his toy line to get pulled, because back when people had morals, they basically said, look, dude, we can't sell kids' toys of someone who's beating the shit out of his manager with a baseball bat. That's not cool. And they took his entire like motorcycle explosion, like jumpy Hot Wheels thing off the shelves because of it. And I kind of want one now, even though I wouldn't call myself a huge Evel Knievel fan. Like, I always liked the name, but I'd never really cared much about the whole Daredevil thing. I probably, like, if you told me there was a guy like Evel Knievel right now that was going to be within a 30-minute drive, and we're like, wow, he's going to jump over 47 school buses and land on a shark, I'd probably go see that. And I kind of agree with his like premise, because they quoted him, was like, no one wants to see me die, but no one wants to miss it if I do die. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of about how I feel about this guy. Oh, because you know it's gonna look pretty cool if he doesn't, right? But that was, you know,
it's gonna look pretty cool if he's splattered all over the sidewalk until they can scrape him up with a spatula.
He had a lot of leather on. He wasn't gonna splatter. It would all be contained within the Knievel garb. It's a fucked up conversation, isn't it?
Man, what else is new?
Yeah, but that's worth. I mean, if you have any interest in that guy, or you just are like me and we're like, I'm bored and I don't feel like looking anymore, this will do. Like, that's something you could click on. You do that with documentaries too? Like, you just get tired of looking for something?
Absolutely. There's a documentary on YouTube. It's fully on YouTube, and I think it's through the Film Board of Canada. It's called The Devil at Your Heels, and it's this 1981, this documentary about Canadian stuntman Ken Carter. And it's about this jump that he wants to do, kind of like Evel Knievel's Snake Canyon, whatever jump thing.
Yeah.
but he wants to do it in this big, heavy ass, like LTD, Ford LTD, 70s LTD. It's like a ton car. He wants to jump this huge thing, and it's about like basically them trying to do this jump. And I won't spoil it because it's an amazingly stupid documentary about an amazingly stupid guy. But there is a man who is also a stuntman, like one of these kind of daredevils, and his name is Kenny Powers. And I'll leave it at that. No, well, you'll have to watch it.
Or is this okay? Yeah, just answer this then.
Yeah.
Is it very likely this is where the character Kenny Powers is based off of?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's ever been
the inspiration.
Said, yeah, I think Eastbound and Down's Kenny Powers was taken somewhat from this Kenny Powers. Possibly.
I need to watch that show again. That's a really stupid, raunchy comedy. For anyone who's listening, if you ever have the time, Eastbound and Down is pretty funny. Way funnier than, well, a lot of things. Anyway, the other thing I got bored of searching for stuff and landed on yesterday, I watched it's a 3-piece docuseries on Netflix that's about how they caught John Gotti. It's just called Got Gotti. So it's like roughly 3-ish hours long, like 1 to 1 hour, 20-minute type pieces. And it's kind of funny, like watching it, you're like, huh. So this guy really set the groundwork for some of our current politicians, it seems like, because there's so many things that like parallel the type of shit that you see in the news now. And I don't really want to go too into that. But I don't know, I always like mob documentaries, I guess. Like they're interesting and fascinating, and just some of the shit that these guys get away with for so fucking long. And then some of the like gall it takes to like catch these guys. Like you literally have like cops that are breaking into this mob boss's house and planting wires in there. I'm like, you guys have cameras. I feel like, and obviously they didn't because they probably would have noticed, but I was like, it's amazing to me that they didn't also have cameras to know who came in. Or I like the only time they mention any type of security thing for these mobsters is, I guess, the building that he was in. Like he had a restaurant that had like an apartment in the back of it. This is where they like made the bulk of their case that actually put him in jail after 4 failed attempts, or 3 or 4 failed attempts, however many it was. The only thing they were concerned about as far as any type of thing that might alert people that they're breaking into this mob boss's house is that one of the neighbors had a dog that barked at stuff. That's it. And like I said, I feel like, I mean, this is going into like the mid 90s. Like I feel like in the mid 90s, like you would have had something that you could, even if it's just like a fucking handy cam pointed at your door so you could see if someone walks through it, that technology isn't what it is today, but there was that stuff there. And it just seems like if you're making millions of dollars a day, like you might want to invest in something to know if someone's like, the cops are chasing you. Maybe you want to, I don't know, watch the people that are watching you, but he didn't do that. And he got dead in jail for other stuff. But it's fascinating. It's pretty well done. Like, I feel like with Netflix documentaries, there's no like middle ground. They're either well done and interesting, or they like lose me in the first like 20 minutes. And this one was on the well done and interesting side. Maybe I'm alone with that because I know there's a lot of people that fall in that rabbit hole more than I do with Netflix. But that was pretty much all I watched. I mean, other than that, it's just been typical boring shit. So, got anything you want to add before we break and then talk about the thing that we've already talked about twice?
Let's talk about the thing we already talked about twice.
We can do it in the future, but we won't have to time travel because I'm not removing clothes to do this.
Maybe you should.
Can't do that. I probably should, but I'm not gonna. So I'm gonna stay fully covered with my angry possum shirt.
Fully clothed and fully erect.
Yes, that's how we record. I'm not really sure where to take that. Anyway, we'll be back in just a minute. Hey guys, I just want to take a second to tell you about fellow You Run Podcast network members, the Horror Friendly Podcast. This podcast explores the horror genre one film at a time with one novice panel member and 2 enthusiasts. Join the Horror Friendly Podcast this month as they welcome in guests and as they celebrate a special birthday episode. So head on over to yourunpodcast.com where you can find all the previous and new Horror Friendly Podcast episodes, as well as all the other great You Run Podcast network members. Okay, so we are back. And you might have noticed recently we had a couple polls up just putting seemingly random movies kind of next to each other. And what those movies were actually picks that Sean and I had made of movies that we're going to talk about in episodes in the near future. Again, with fully erect naked time travel involved. Sean won these polls by a landslide, and this was the landslidiest of landslides. Again, naked erections. This is why these things slide. It's got to be why, right? Anyway. We are talking about the movie The Terminator from 1984. It has Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton, and we start movies with a third-party review. So let's do that. Why is my mouse? Oh, there it goes. This week's third-party review comes from Tyler K. Tyler says, it's a good movie for its time. It's a low-budget masterpiece, but it has no capes.
Does that mean like it's not a superhero movie?
I don't know. Just no capes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and he gives it 4 out of 5 stars.
That's not bad for a movie. He said it was good for its time.
Yeah, well, I agree with him that it could use a cape or two. Like, what movie can't?
Everything could use a cape or two.
Capes, you know what? Not that we need to rehash this, but Larry David got it right on Seinfeld. He was the man in the cape.
All right, with that being said, we move over to IMDb where we talk about the storyline and the plot. But first off, we talk about the popularity. This movie is down 34 slots to 370 out of something. Don't know how those are formulated. Don't know why those are things. But if we look at the storyline and the plot, one or the other, we'll start first with the one on the top here. It says, a human soldier is sent from 2029 to 1984 to stop an almost indestructible cyborg killing machine, sent from the same year, obviously, which has been programmed to execute a young woman whose unborn son is the key to humanity's future salvation. If we go down to the storyline, this one's care of Nick Reganis, and I feel like Nick Reganis has provided us with a storyline in the past. Freelancer Nick Reganis, he says, sent back from a dystopian 2029 where the cold machines have conquered the entire world to 1984 Los Angeles, the indestructible cyborg human known as the Terminator commences his deadly mission to kill humankind's most important woman, the unsuspecting Sarah Connor. However, from the same war-torn post-apocalyptic future comes a battle-scarred defender, Kyle Reese, a brave soldier of the Human Resistance Army, bent on stopping the cybernetic killer from eliminating the world's last hope. But the Terminator has no feelings. He does not sleep, and above all, he will not stop until he carries out his grim task. Does our future lie in our past? Question mark.
So going through the keywords for this, they're not right next to each other, but they're pretty close. Close enough. This is what I'm seeing like when I look at them. 2 keywords for this, which is really 5 words, but we're going to go with it anyway. 1, pregnancy. 2, hit by a truck.
I mean, I like it.
All right, where do we start with this movie? So we kind of touched on this a little bit. I guess we'll start with the cast. So this obviously stars Arnold Schwarzenegger in what I would say is probably his most iconic role. And you could kind of pair that with the sequel to the first sequel to this. We're not going to get into all. I'm going to try to avoid talking too much about the second movie, but
well, I think this one definitely put him on the map.
Well, and
he's
yes,
a Conan.
Absolutely.
He did Conan before this, right?
He was in Conan before this, Commando, and Predator would have been after this. That was
definitely
87.
after.
Yeah.
Commando was not before, was it?
Was it?
I don't think so.
I thought it was. Regardless.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
As we mentioned, we have Arnold and we have Linda Hamilton. Linda Hamilton is fantastic in this role as Sarah Connor. Honestly, I think she gets better as it goes along up until the new one, which I haven't seen that she's in. So I can't really speak to that. I've only heard it's fantastic and I'm missing out. But we also have Michael Biehn.
Come on.
Kyle Reese.
Put some respect on his goddamn name. Michael Biehn.
No. We have Pumpkinhead's Lance Hendrickson, also from other shit that we've watched. Earl Bowen, who you'll see in this franchise. Dick Miller, who is a show favorite. We've seen
third or fourth time for Dick Miller on the whole show.
At least.
On the run of the DPM.
And, Bill Paxton, who is also just, he's fucking great. I like Bill Paxton. I miss Bill Paxton. Any thoughts on the cast on this? Because it is there's kind of a like good mix of like horror, sci-fi, regulars. Like there's a lot of faces you're going to recognize in this movie if you listen to the show, more than likely.
I think the thing with the cast that's kind of odd is that there are so many people in the movie that are just uncredited that the cast itself seems very small. And the other thing about the casting is like just kind of the story behind initially Schwarzenegger was picked to be Kyle Reese, and they figured that wouldn't work because who are they going to pit against Arnold Schwarzenegger being the bad guy? And some of the thoughts were at one point Lance Henriksen was in the running to be the Terminator. I think they said O.J. Simpson supposedly. I don't know if that was ever really.
No,
Was that debunked?
No, that was true. I forget. We talked about this on something
They couldn't
else.
imagine him as a killer or something, right?
Yeah, that's what it was. They couldn't imagine him. It was on Schwarzenegger's. That's where it was. It was on Schwarzenegger's
the documentary on
Netflix. He brought it up that he was supposed to play opposite OJ, but no one would believe that OJ was a killer.
Womp womp. And then Sly Stallone, Mel Gibson both turned down the Terminator role. I guess Sting had been up for Kyle Reese. They said others were Christopher Reeve, Matt Dillon, Kurt Russell, Treat Williams, Tommy Lee Jones, Scott Glenn, and Bruce Springsteen. Okay, sure. Sure.
I can see Kurt Russell playing Kyle Reese like pretty well, but
any of those actors really. But
yeah. But
Bruce Springsteen,
I'm biased. I like, Bruce. Has he even been an actor? I know he's been in a couple movies, but has he been like in a movie as an actor, not as like Bruce Springsteen
himself or
walking?
Somebody. No, I don't think so.
A parody of himself.
We could look on IMDb, but it's not really worth our time to do so. What?
No, because I don't give a shit.
I wanted to ask you, like, when was do you have any like memories of seeing this for the first time, or what's kind of your relationship with this movie? I guess, for lack of a better phrase.
I don't remember the first time I saw it. I'm sure it was a video store pickup for me, just based off when this came out and how long it's been around. I know I think I saw the sequel before I saw the first one. Like, I think I'd go back and catch up on it. But this movie, and I mean, okay, spoilers ahead for the 40-year-old movie. Get that out of the way first. And I do like this movie quite a bit. Like, it's a hard movie to like shit on. And the things that you can shit on with it are kind of like not really
shit onable.
Good critique. I mean, they are if you want to be a dick about it, but I don't think they really are great, especially, again, if you compare it to where this franchise goes. Well, anyway, we'll come back around to that. I always remember this being the movie that I was like, this one's good, but I don't like it as much as the other one. So I kind of overlooked it a lot. As like, because, back before everything was at your fingertips, you'd go to the shit that you had on the shelf that you could rewatch, because TV didn't always work out that way. And I would always skip over this one and go right to 2 if I wanted a Terminator fix for whatever reason. Over the years, like whenever I do go back to this one, it's kind of becoming a lot like Alien and Aliens. It just kind of depends on what mood I'm in. If I'm in for a mood for more of like a horror type sci-fi movie, this is the better choice. If I want more like action and like craziness, sequel's still a better choice. It's funny because as heralded as this movie is, I almost feel like it just is overshadowed by everything that came after it. How about you?
I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, and that's fine. As we've proven multiple times, wrong opinions are opinions too. But my first, the reason I kind of asked is like, when we got a VCR in, I don't know, when I was 9, this was like, movies like this is what we watched. There was a local place before Blockbuster, before you could rent movies at the grocery store. Our mailman, Aaron the mailman, had opened a video store in like a local strip mall called Popeye's Video. It cost $20 for a membership. You had to pay for a membership to be able to rent, to have the honor to pay him to be able to rent more movies. But with that $20, you got 20 free rentals. Because I think at first we had some kind of trial membership or something, and then we got this other membership, this paid one that gave us the 20 free, and we watched the shit out of it. We rented, like, of our 20 rentals, I would say probably 8 of those 20 rentals went towards renting this, taking it home, watching it, having to return it, renting it again, ad nauseum, rinse, repeat. I like this movie, or I don't know, I don't want to give it away so much, but I actually read the movie novelization because as a kid, you're just like, oh, you want to just dive into shit like this, right? It just captures your attention. And the novelization is actually decent. It kind of gives you a little bit more info into Skynet. It actually kind of explains a little bit more what leads into the second movie. So it was kind of interesting in that respect. I used to be able to tell you, oh yeah, instead of God damn that the garbage man says when he sees Arnold for the first time, they probably describe like how much sweat was on his forehead, just stupid shit like that.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, for me, that was the first time for me, was probably right around 1986. And the effects were, and they still are pretty, for the most part. I think some of them are, I mean, it's 1984. For 1984, these effects are, holy shit, blow your mind. How did they do that kind of stuff? And there are some that are kind of shitty looking, but I think that for the most part, it's Stan Winston, like, holy shit.
I don't think they're shitty looking. I think you almost have to look at this two ways. This movie, for when it came out, 1984, and it only had like a $6.5 million budget, is incredibly ambitious for what they put to screen in this movie. For that time frame and what was available at the time, the only way that you could really shit on it, and this is why I was kind of hinting at earlier, is if you're looking at it in comparison from a 2024 lens or even like a 2000 lens. Like, it doesn't look like what you would get if you were to remake this exact movie with modern effects. The flip side of that is we've seen a lot of Terminator movies that have come out, in the last probably 20 years. They all look like fucking garbage because they're all so heavily emphasized on CG and, quite frankly, bad CG and animating everything, as opposed to doing these like tense stop motion like battles and all this stuff, using camera tricks, using lighting, using those types of things that really good filmmakers can do and use to their advantage to take a really simple shot and make it look amazing. Now they just animated. And this movie is a shining example of like, do these effects look like they came out of 1984? Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
But
some of them hold up.
There's a lot of them that hold up, especially when you get into like the gunshots and the practical effects. The only thing where it really kind of stands out is in the third act of the movie when the Arnold meat suit is melted off and you start seeing the stop motion and that type of stuff. That's the only spot where I'd say it looks really questionable. And that's a bad word. That's not even the right word. That's the only spot where I would say it looks really dated. That and maybe the eyeball scene.
Yeah, and I think when I say look shitty, I think what I mean are the scenes, and they don't really look shitty, so to speak, is that it's that thing where they project something on a screen behind the actors. And that's the part where the T-800 or whatever is, limping along and blah, 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 blah. We'll get to that part. And I want to take exception to the guest reviewers' mention of low budget. You just said, what'd you say? The budget was like 8 million or something?
It's 6.4 million.
In 1984, that's a lot of fucking money. Like, they didn't have $200 million budgets or $500 million budgets like they have now. Like, Star Wars A New Hope was 11 million. That's a lot of money in 1977. So, when you look at it now, and I'm not talking necessarily to you, I'm just talking like in the general thing, it's kind of a pet peeve when people are like, oh, low budget. You know how much movies used to cost? It's not like movies now. There were special effects, number one, but there wasn't so much. Half the cost of the shit now is like the CGI crap that they have to do.
Half the cost
to make
of the
it
shit now is paying for a fucking
and paying
Super
for the
Bowl
actors.
ad. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like $6.5 million is kind of on like the high end of low budget for the time. I don't feel like it's like you mentioned. Star Wars had 11 million. I'm sure if we went through like the most expensive movies to be made, this probably isn't even like scratching the top of the barrel.
Oh, I'm sure it's not, but I think it's probably right in the range that you would expect to make a movie in 1984.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of where I feel like this would be what's a good way to put it? This be the equivalent of like what it costs to make. I don't even want to say that. I was going to say like the first Fast and the Furious movie, whenever the fuck that came out. Like whatever the budget was to that, that's probably about the scale of what this would be.
Probably middle of the road. Sure.
Yeah. Not the one now, like,
where it's they have to pay $1 billion and they have to make $1 billion to make up for it.
Yeah. Right.
So let's talk about the story just really briefly. And I know our storyline and our plot really kind of said all that needs to be said, but basically a robot dude from the future who is in a meat suit teleports back to 1984, and another guy does too, and the robot dude's job is to kill a woman whose future son will lead the human resistance against the robots. And the whole thing is like Skynet is this system that it's a computer system that makes the robots. It basically takes over. It rebels against its creators, and in the future, computers run everything, and they start building machines of themselves so they can go fight humans, basically, right? So Kyle Reese is the human guy. He's sent back to the past to protect her from the robot guy. So it's like this struggle between the human and the robot throughout this entire movie. I mean, that's like a really high level generalization of what this movie is about.
I feel like time travel is an easy way to like fuck off on a movie. Like you could do a lot. I feel like you can do a lot more wrong to fuck up your storyline than right when you start fucking around with time travel. And look at Marvel. Like that's a perfect example of how you start fucking up your movies with time travel. But with this, at least for this movie, the simplicity of why these two characters have traveled back in time and how they interact with each other and with Sarah Connor is played extremely well. They kind of unravel it a little bit with the time paradox and all that shit by the end of the movie, or they start to, which whatever. But I think this movie does so much to just take a simple concept and really just kind of grow it in this like hour and 45-minute storyline, and kind of, I'm not going to say it's like a watertight or an airtight like time travel story, but it's enough that like until you rent it 8 times out of 20 from the video store or whatever, you don't start, like, if you're just the average watcher of a movie, like, most people aren't going to feel the need to pick this apart, because it's like, how the fuck does that make sense? Like, there's no real like gaping plot hole in this that you need to really like pull the strings at to like pick apart just for the sake of like discrediting itself.
Yeah, and I think it's a cool concept where when Arnold comes back, when the Terminator comes back, he knows he's looking for Sarah Connor, but he doesn't know what she looks like. He doesn't know, where she lives or anything like that. So he's like going through the phone book, and the whole premise starts off with he goes to a random Sarah Connor's house in LA or whatever, and he kills her. And that it's odd
this
that
scene
it
is
shows up.
Fucking brutal, by the way.
It is. It is. And I can tell you the novelization has more information about running over the toy car. But regardless, her death is broadcast on the news. It's like they broadcast, this random lady gets killed. Sarah Connor, Sarah J. Connor, whatever her name is. Then he goes to the next Sarah Connor and he kills her. And then he finally figures out, the Sarah Connor that I'm looking for, I think there were 3 listings in the phone book or something. So she's the last one. And Kyle Reese has the advantage of it. He knows what she looks like. I think he must know where she lives or where she works or something.
I didn't get the impression that he figured out which Sarah Connor he was looking for. I got the impression he just found Sarah Connor and killed her. He didn't really care which one it was. And the funny thing about that is, to kind of play on that, if I watched it, I kind of wondered this. So he goes and kills the roommate, which is a really funny scene because she's had her headset on the entire time as like
cannot hear that her boyfriend is being thrown around this tiny apartment.
Right. By Arnold fucking Schwarzenegger. But
right.
Anyway, and again, this isn't a plot hole. This is just how this is more plot armor, if anything. But, he goes and he wipes out the boyfriend, which is kind of funny. He wipes out the girlfriend, which is goofy, but whatever. And Sarah calls, is like, oh my God, I'm Sarah Connor. I'm like, I'm here and scared and fucked up and stuff. Like, is pretty much what she says if she doesn't make that phone call, does he just like travel back in time? Like, I did my job, off to kill humans. And the whole movie is then irrelevant after that.
That's a good point.
I mean, again, it is a little bit of like plot armor, so the rest of the movie can happen. It's not something you really think about unless you've watched this movie too many times. But that one phone call almost is like, if he just didn't call, like, does he just say fuck it and leave? Or,
well, it's funny too is that I've seen this countless times, and I never silly me never put 2 and 2 together that the reason that he goes after this Sarah Connor, he doesn't necessarily, like you just mentioned earlier, like he doesn't necessarily know that she's the right one. He's just killing all of them. And this one's the one that puts up the biggest fight. So he just continues to fight. What if she's not even the real Sarah Connor? What if there's
well, yeah,
what if there's the 4th one?
Well,
and
right.
He just stumbled on this one, and this is the one he's having the problems with. Wow, mind blown.
But the idea of him just like, again, he's a machine, so the idea of him just going like kill all of them makes more sense to me than like kill the right one. Like, why would he give a shit about like, whatever. And again, that also gives the plot armor of like, well, what if she wasn't listed?
Right? Yeah, unlisted.
Right. Again, then you just have 2 dead Sarah Connors, and he goes back like, oh shit, she was unlisted. I'll go back again.
Well, they can't because they destroyed the machine. That's why more people aren't sent through.
True.
And the thing is, they can't be sent with any inorganic material. The way that the Terminator gets
that
around
in the
that.
Book, or was I got
no, that's in the movie.
Part.
That's why they're nude.
Okay.
So they
no,
teleport.
I got that part. I don't remember the part about them not sending other people.
Well, yeah. So there's a scene. Reese catches up to Sarah Connor in the coolest named nightclub ever, Tech Noir. He finds her there. So does Arnold. They both find her, and there's this big gunfight and everything. And they eventually get arrested. They get arrested, which oddly enough, all these people have been murdered and whatever, and they finally get arrested. Reese and Sarah Connor get arrested, and they get taken to the police station, and they bring in a psychiatrist to talk to Reese because he seems like the story he's telling is so far-fetched that they're like, this guy has to be delusional, right? He has to be crazy. And he tells the story like, hey, the reason that we came through, they sent the Terminator through, blah, 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 blah. They destroyed the machine. So he's telling the psychiatrist that, but then he also clues him in on, well, why were you naked when you came through? For whatever reason, he told him that. He's like, well, because they no inorganic material. That's why we don't have laser guns. That's why we don't have these weapons. Well, how did the Terminator get through? And it's like, well, he's wrapped in this organic material. Makes sense.
They never stopped to ask, why did you steal the pants of the guy who shit himself? Why didn't you go steal a pair of pants from like anyone who didn't shit themselves? That's cool.
He steals clothes from that homeless guy. Reese steals clothes from a homeless man at the beginning of the movie, his pants at least. Reese has like, I mean, I know that they're supposed to be dingy, crappy looking clothes. I wanted to dress like that guy like my entire childhood. And he wore pants that a guy shat his pants.
Aside from the shit stand. Yeah. And I also think while we're on the subject of naked Terminators and naked time travelers, there's no fucking way that the three punkers, Bill Paxton included, that their clothing would fit Arnold fucking Schwarzenegger at this time in his life.
Did you see? So he takes out these three guys at the beginning. The jacket that he steals from how big is that fucking jacket?
Not as big as it is once it's on Arnold.
He's swimming in the fucking thing. It's insane.
That's the only way they just put on a pair of JNCOs and they're all of a sudden like skin tight on Arnold.
Yeah.
Something like that.
He's wearing a smock.
I thought it would have been funny because they don't, but if his little, muscle shirt or whatever was like a complete tube top, just like right up to the, bottom of his chest, and that's
He's
all
wearing toddler clothes. That's what they should have done.
It would have been funny if they had done that. And he gets a change of clothes later anyway, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But
he gets burnt soon enough.
Yeah, well, I also, while we're on the subject of stuff we like, and you mentioned the gunfight at Tech Noir, the first time you see Arnold get just annihilated with shotgun like fire and then get back up, there's a lot that could be said about Arnold Schwarzenegger's acting. And granted, if you're going to typecast Arnold Schwarzenegger to play anything, maybe a robot is what you would typecast him to play. But holy shit, does his kind of robotic like tendencies really play to the effectiveness of this character and how he moves and when he gets back up. I mean, I'm not saying he should have gotten an Oscar for this, but it really is playing to his strengths and some of his, at least at the time, shortcomings as an actor. They really highlighted it and made it a strength for him in this movie.
Yeah, I think that this is the perfect role for him at this point in his career, where he doesn't have to say a lot of things. I think it would have been crazy for him to be Reese with all the dialogue that's in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
But with him not having a lot of lines, in general, really helps his character. And also, like you said, he's just playing, it's all physical. Like it's almost exclusively physical performance. So this is perfect for him. This is like getting his feet wet. Obviously, the movies that he's been in prior to this, the high level ones like the Conan films are probably the highest level. Commando was like 2 movies after this. It's just fitting for him. This is like a perfect way to kind of onboard him. He's not a stupid guy. If you've seen the Netflix documentaries, he's a pretty smart guy. He's smart with his money.
I hope I didn't imply that. Like, I don't think he's stupid at all.
I think the general consensus probably at this point in his career was he's just like a bodybuilder dude and he's an idiot. Like he can't speak English well, so he's got to be stupid. I think that's a very miscategorized feeling about him, but I think it's perfect for this point in his career.
Yeah, and again, I don't think it's any secret that I think we're both fans of Schwarzenegger on this podcast, but he, like I said, it's not my favorite role of his because he has other movies that he's done after this that I like more, but I think this might be his best performance. Like between this and Part 2, like this character, the T-8000, whatever he is probably his best like performance between these two movies.
I think the whole character is probably his most iconic. I mean, he has his catchphrase that he's been using since "I'll be back."
Oh yeah,
is from this movie. He's used it as much as humanly possible.
He's in that fucking Super Bowl commercial this year.
But I think that this might not be his best role, but this specific character and the ensemble that have been in these movies with him have been his best kind of supporting cast. They make the movies most memorable. I mean, honestly, like if we talk about the franchise for just a second, the Terminator for me, classic. I'm sure you would consider it classic too. T2, great movie. Like, hands down.
I think it's quite possibly the best standalone sequel of all time. Or it's in the conversation.
And I think once we pass that, it's kind of like Terminator 3. I don't even know if I've seen the full thing, but I've seen all the Terminator movies, and that might be the one I've seen the least.
I watched Terminator 3 in theaters just because there was that still of Arnold with the fucking Gatling gun and the coffin over his shoulder like it was a boombox. I was like, this looks so ridiculous that I'm going to go see it just to see him boomboxing a fucking coffin with a Gatling gun. It didn't live up to expectations. So.
I saw the Terminator, The Next Generation, or whatever it is, with Christian Bale. Saw that in the theater. I saw Genesis. I've seen the latest one, which I think is like the Dark Crystal, Terminator Dark Crystal, or Dark Fate, or whatever. And Terminator Dark Fate is actually, I thought that was pretty decent. Like of all the
Is that
franchise.
the one with
Linda Hamilton's in it again?
Is that the one with the dragon chick, Amelia Clark? She in that, or is that a different one?
That is Genesis. I think that's where she plays Sarah Connor. And I didn't mind that one so much because they do a really cool thing where in that movie, they reshoot a lot of the same scenes that they made for the Terminator because it's supposed to be a retelling of that thing, but a different, there's a different timeline or something, a different branch of the timeline that happens in that movie. So Amelia Clark plays the Linda Hamilton role, but it starts to go off the rails. I didn't hate it as much as most people did. I'm, kind of a Terminator sucker. Like I'll pretty much watch most Terminator shit and think, it's not too bad. But I thought Dark Fate was pretty good. They kind of went in a little bit different direction. I think the Terminator, instead of being liquid metal, was, God, what was he this time? Or in that one, he could become a gun, basically. Like the T-1000 couldn't become a gun, right? He couldn't, no moving parts, or he couldn't be a projectile or whatever. And I think this one, I could be totally misremembering it. It's been a while since I saw that, but I like that one. But most of the other ones besides 1 and 2, I haven't. They're not great.
The last movie I saw of them, I think, was the Christian Bale one, which I actually thought was okay. I like that they at least tried to do something different with that.
Yeah, Salvation. New Generation Salvation, whatever.
I actually really liked the TV show they did that didn't last very long, the one that was on Fox, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
I know show would never happen now because it starts with a Terminator shooting up a fucking school. So I don't think that's going to end up on at least network TV now. But I remember that being, I was like, it's interesting. Not that we're going to need to go on a whole franchise talk too much, but it feels like after 2, so much of whoever the bad guy was, the big bad in the movie, tried to do their best T-1000. What's his name? Whatever his name was. Jason Patrick? Robert Patrick, one of those guys.
Yeah, Patrick guy.
Whoever was the big bad in those was just trying to do their best Robert Patrick impersonation to an extent going forward, with maybe the exception of the Christian Bale one. Like I said, that one tried to do something different. Mm-hmm. And the Terminators that you saw in the show, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, I think it was, they at least kind of had like a different vibe to them. Like it didn't, to me, feel like they were just doing an impression of what we had seen before. So I kind of like that. But that show only made it 1 or 2 seasons and kind of died unspectacularly. And then we got more movies, for better or worse. So it would have been interesting to see if even a channel like AMC or FX or one of those,
or HBO or Prestige.
Well, that would
TV.
be even. I mean, that would be even better if it was on HBO case. And they could really, but. I mean, even those, because we went through that period in the early 2000s where like every channel had to we have to have the most violent, gritty, no boobs TV on TV is basically what they were trying to do.
Violent, no boobs TV.
Yeah. And that's that kind of works for Terminator. They could have gotten away with that. So I would have been still into it if it was on, but it didn't last.
It's funny you mentioned the shooting the school up and not being able to show that. And I think there was probably a period of time in recent history where in this movie, there's this whole scene. It's the I'll be back scene when Arnold comes to visit Sarah in the police station, in the LA police station. And he comes back and he drives a car right through the front desk and
it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah. And he just basically invades the place, kills all the cops. I remember there being some controversy about that few years ago, and now with all the everybody ACAB stuff and defund the police, now it's like whatever, it's no commentary on that, just saying like it's kind of funny how that's now 180'd and it's back to being, I guess at this point 360'd, right? It's back to being it's okay, it's fine, whatever.
Did this come out before Maniac Cop? Because I think this has the better police station like bad guys shoot 'em up scene. Was it 88?
It did, yeah. Maniac Cop was 88.
Okay, well this did better, so sorry Bruce Campbell.
Sorry, Robert Zadar.
That whole sequence, and again, the first 2 movies both have sequences like this where James Cameron in these movies does such a good job of doing these action pieces where you have like maybe a 5-minute clip where you, at least the first time you see it, and even now you can get wrapped up in it. Like, you'll just sit there with your jaw on the floor. Like, that's fucking cool. Like, everything that he's putting on screen right now is fucking cool. And he's done a lot of stuff. Like, Cameron anymore, I don't really like. I don't like the Avatar movies. I didn't like, and really, I haven't like. I can't think of much I have liked of his since Terminator or Aliens, whichever one was last. But for a while there, he really had an eye for like when he wants to do something big and like over the top crazy. He had a good way of kind of getting hooks in and keeping your attention for sure.
Well, even if he doesn't do the genre that you like, he still does over the top crazy.
Sure.
It's just in a different way.
Well, and I'm not, again, not knocking him, but I can't get into Blue Cat people. I'm sorry.
I like it. I think when a lot of people think of Terminator, like you had mentioned earlier, they think of the horror, they think of the sci-fi, they think of the action. But this movie, just the way that it's presented, it does have, I think tech noir is like a really good analog, you know, the club tech noir. This movie it tells very much this noir kind of story as well. When I watched it this time, there was just little things that were done, little touches. You know, there's a lot to be said for people that are film scholars. We are not film scholars. I can speak for myself, at least. I'm not a film scholar, but there are scenes
I am a film scholar. That's why I watch Nail Gun Massacre for fun.
I knew it. You know what the good stuff is, and you like to watch that stuff. But even the scene, like when Arnold first shows up, there's the scene where he's nude and he's at like the LA Observatory or something, and he steps.
Got to take in the scene.
He steps into the he steps and you see the lights, all the lights in downtown LA, and it's like this is letting you know it's this one guy, this one robot, and or Terminator essentially, and he has to find in this whole city this person that he's looking for. You know, it just sets that shot up. There's these just these little touches like that throughout the movie. I think the whole, you know, just it's this whole detective story. It's a cat and mouse, not necessarily detective, but it's like a cat and mouse story, cat and mouse chase. Kyle and Sarah have to be one step ahead of the Terminator because he's coming for them. You know, every time they feel like they're safe, they're never safe. Kyle says he absolutely will not stop until you are dead. And that is absolutely true. That is the whole mission of this robot. He needs to tell her something really shocking.
She doesn't call home.
True. And he would have thought his job was over and he would have went and swam in La Brea tar pits or something. I don't know. But, you know, it's just a under-commented thing, I guess, on this movie is that there are these kind of weird, it's not like Blade Runner level noir stuff, but it's got this noir kind of storyline, detective kind of feel to the whole movie. And that's, I think just for me, that's one thing that I really like about this movie is that it has those elements besides just being this run-of-the-mill action movie. You know, at the time, it could have been like every other action movie, but it's not. It's got these other mixtures, these other little flavors that are mixed into the movie that compel you to finish it. You know, that for me personally, I mean, that's one of the things that I really love about it. It mixes all these genres together.
Well, and that's all built on like the great performances from our 3 lead actors in this. And it does a really good job for a movie, this kind of movie from this era. It does a really good job of taking this horrific sci-fi tech noir thing and still making I mean, when you say it, it sounds unbelievable, but when you watch it, it works. This really decent little love story that's kind of peppered in there. Like, I don't think if Arnold Schwarzenegger is a, you know, murder robot and he's chasing me, I'm going to stop to bone. Maybe I would, but you know, given the opportunity, like, you never know. Hey. But they do. And then that's where it gets to the, like, the weird time paradox shit with the, like, well, what if, you know, you get to the end of the movie and here's Sarah all knocked up in preggers and she's like, what if you don't send your dad back to go knock me up? Like, how fucked up is that? Like, why would you think about that? Why am I thinking? It's like, yeah, why are you thinking about that? I almost wish that line wasn't in there because it's just peeling off the Band-Aid. It's not that it cheapens it. Like, it's another thing that's like, on the one hand, I like that the character is, especially knowing what Linda Hamilton's character, Sarah Connor, becomes in the next movie. And that's one thing I think deserves a lot of credit too, is Linda Hamilton's performance in these 2 movies is just fucking fantastic. Maybe Arnold shouldn't have gotten an Oscar, but I wouldn't have been mad if Linda Hamilton did. But it's this little breadcrumb that just picks at the scab a little bit, and it just opens the doors to so many questions that I don't want to ask. You know, like, I would have been happier just being like, this is the story and this is what it is. Why do we have to question that part? but it also is a very human thing. Like I would imagine if I somehow could be knocked up by a human that came back from the future and was being chased
Now
by,
that's a movie I want to see.
well, it's called Junior, basically the same concept. But I would imagine that probably is the type of question you would ask. Is like, did I just change the future by now you know who you're, or did you know all along? Like it just opens all these like
Time paradox doors. That's what this movie's taught me what a time paradox is.
Yeah, that's probably where I learned it too.
And I wanted to mention before we moved on and probably start wrapping up on this is the scenes, the flashbacks, the dreams where Kyle Reese has the thoughts of like what it was like from where he just came from. It's so gritty, so grim, so dirty, so just depressing, but it adds so much flavor to you knowing who that character is. And I don't think he says much of anything in those scenes when he's in the future. Maybe he says a couple words. I don't think he says anything, but it totally builds and lets you know what this guy's come from, where he's from, why this is so important to him, because this is going to basically save humanity from this whole computer system that's hell bent on taking over everything.
So before we start wrapping up, then, do you have any negatives or anything like that you want to lean in? I don't think it's a real negative with this movie, judging by the conversation we've already had about it. But aside from the effects that we touched on, is there anything really negative that you would want to point out with this one?
No, I think just kind of some of the effects they are what they are. It's almost, when we talked about RoboCop, we talked about when I think there's that Peter Weller scene in the uncut version where it's like a animatronic. And I think some of the effects can be kind of animatronic-y or plastic face and rubber faces and stuff. You mentioned it earlier, the eyeball scene where he has to take his eye out, where there's the hand moving and the looking in the mirror and all that stuff, where it's a mannequin head or a special effect, a puppet. That looks not great.
It doesn't look great, but I actually think they wrote around that pretty well.
I think they do a hell of a job for 1984 for trying to. It's very ambitious that they even did it.
There's that too, but there's a line because they're in the hotel and he's like, "We got the dogs because they used to look rubbery and blah blah blah." My point is, he actually has a line about how the Terminators used to look pretty rubbery and fake, and now they don't, and it almost kind of like makes you think like, because you're basically seeing Schwarzenegger like decay through this movie for the most part, hence the dead cat smell and all that shit. But it almost, that line for me at least, gave enough of a thought bubble, like, oh, okay, so they used to look shitty. Like maybe in my head I'm like, well, he's all shot up and befugged now, like maybe he's gonna look shitty for a little bit and he'll heal up and look better after he dissects himself a little bit. So if you're looking at just the effect, like just pictures of it or video of it without context, right? But if you look at it in context for what's happening in the movie, and again, it's a little throwaway line that's in there, but it leads just enough to make me be like, all right, I can buy this. Like, all right, James Cameron, what you're selling me, I'm okay with. I'm not gonna bitch about that scene.
And back in the day, in the 80s, I mean, it sold me. I couldn't watch those scenes for a long time. That the scene where he's plucking the eyeball out, the hand thing, I mean, I could watch it, but the Terminator, even the stop motion, the stuff that we were like, it's not great, but it's pretty cool, where they have the stop motion skeleton and it's limping towards them, that freaked me out forever. It took me forever to be able to watch that as a kid. Now obviously it's like, oh, yeah, you kind of expect it and it's not super impressive, but at the time it was downright awesome,
I love stop motion stuff. Like when it's done right, and I think in this movie it's done right.
Yeah.
It's not realistic, but it looks fucking cool and it's fun. And movies are supposed to be fun, so I can't really bitch about that.
Yeah, true.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else really to add negative, so what time is it?
Then you're in for a big treat, bro, because it's hot dog time.
That's right, bro. I'm going to kick us off this week because I'm going to let you have the floor since this apparently is a little bit more of a love affair for you than it is for me, but that's okay. But this is a genre defining and really decade defining film. It's a movie that kicks off a mega franchise and it does it in a really good way. I do think the franchise gets a little bit better before falling off a cliff, but this is such a solid entry in this film series that it's hard to really deny it. Schwarzenegger's at his best. Linda Hamilton's awesome in this, and the entire cast really, they earned their paycheck in this without doubt. There's a reason why this movie they made fucking children's toys of this movie. This is an R-rated movie about a robot that comes back in time to fucking kill people, nude occasionally. And they made children's toys for it. That's how big this movie was. And it's great. It holds up. The story, it holds up because the story is told really, really well. The writing is well done. And even the stuff that if you really want to, you can pick apart. You could also say, no, this is a well-told story and nothing's perfect. And it's great. So I really don't have any major like qualms with it. I give this movie a really solid 8 cybernetic Skynet hot dogs out of 10 mustarded up non-cybernetic hot dogs, I guess.
That's a mouthful of circuits.
It's a spicy wiener.
9-year-old me is just totally in love with the story beats of the movie. I mean, I'm considerably older than that, and I still am. I love the little scenes like when Arnold gets his clothes from the punkers that we talked about earlier. I really love the whole Reese running through the department store and getting the jacket, the shoes, of course, a shotgun because it's 1984, and what department store doesn't have shotguns? And again, the police station scenes, the future scenes, kind of showing you how bleak everything is. It introduced me to the concept of the time paradox. I love the action / thriller / noir / sci-fi feel of the whole movie. I like T2 as well. I think that's on par with this movie, but I think Terminator is the first time that I watched a movie and felt like it was a gateway to adult film, and not porno adult film, but like adult entertainment, things that adults watched rather than cartoons and Disney shit that I probably watched as a younger kid. For me, Terminator is 9 pipe bombs out of 11. I don't, we kind of talked about all the how it holds up and everything. I don't know if this movie gets classified a lot as being like a horror adjacent movie. I don't know if a horror fan would watch this and be like, there's nothing scary. But if this is the first time you're watching it, I feel like there is genuine terror in the movie. I still think it's one of the top-notch action movies of the 80s. If someone were like, recommend me some 80s action movies, this one's going right in the bucket.
I would agree with that. Anyway, so
Hey,
with all,
you're not gonna get my opinion over here, or what?
no, I don't want your opinion. You're always so fucking negative.
Well, I'm gonna give this movie, there's no fucking devils in this movie, that's bullshit. I'm gonna give this one 1. 1 out of a million. What a piece of garbage.
1 what out of a million?
1. Just one thing.
You're so condescending. Fucking make
Why
a
do we
rating
let this guy on?
sticks. I don't know. What was his
What do you
name?
mean let
Dewey
me on?
Demon
Fuck
System
you.
or something?
Fuck you, Baldy.
This guy, just go away. What a dick.
Did you just call yourself Baldy?
That's
Or
not
are you
me.
calling me Baldy?
What are you talking about?
Did we agree on Dewey Demon System? Is that his name?
Hey, I think he's the Jersey Devil.
Oh, he's a Jersey Devil now.
Yeah, what you talking about? What's the matter for you? Hey,
I mean, nothing good comes out of Jersey, so I'm okay with that.
No shade towards Jersey.
Yeah,
No
sure.
shade towards a stereotypical Jersey Devil that's on this show now.
at least I'm only around for the hot dogs. Give me some of the extra mustard.
All right, go. We got to
Spicy
get to the
mustard?
question of the week. Question of the week.
All right.
Anyway, now that fucker's gone, we have a question of the week. We ask you every week a question. This week is no different. And this week we asked a very stupid question, but a couple people answered. And the question is, who would win in a fight, RoboCop or the Terminator? The only people that answered were people on Twitter. So I guess we'll start there. And we're going to start with Boomer over at Podcast in the Woods. And he says it would take the Terminator 2 seconds to shoot RoboCop in the fucking face, and then it's all over. You don't mess with the Governor. Sean's disagreeing, apparently, or sort of, maybe. Our friends, the Krusty Boys, they are also on the You Run Podcast Network. You can find them at the Krusty Boys and at yourunpodcast.com. Says, as much as I love RoboCop, I've seen him get torn to pieces a whole bunch of times, and I'm going to have to say Terminator, no contest. Friends over at Dissect That Film, they say, if it's the original T-800 from Terminator 1, then I'm going with RoboCop. Robo would be able to figure it out and calculate a way to destroy it quickly. If a young Sarah Connor could do it, RoboCop could definitely do it. Piggybacking on that is our friend Pearl, who is at his SpaceX, and she says, check mark. This is what I came to say, and that is the correct answer.
I agree. Come on.
I don't.
At least we have 2 people that know what they're talking about commenting.
I have
on the
reasoning.
question.
I
of the
have
week.
sound scientific reasoning behind why I think that, what I think, but we'll go there. Stu World Order at SWO Production says, probably RoboCop. Terminators are defeated by regular human beings, and RoboCop has all the advantages of tactical human mind to go with his enhancements. Tough call, though. Brent Newman over at Movies for Days, who's also on the You Run Podcast Network, Network says, I vote RoboCop. He's got human creativity to draw upon and always has a team of allies that he has his back. Does he? Okay. These two factors always help him beat the odds when his technology power isn't enough. That's a weird word. And lastly, over at Pop Culture Reflection Podcast, another You Run Podcast Network member said, damn, this is a good question. I think I'm going to go with RoboCop. So
let's hear yours, John. Why are you wrong?
I think the Terminator wins because the Terminator is a robot that's wearing a meat suit. RoboCop is a meat suit that's wearing a robot suit. He's wrapped in. So because of that, robots win. All he has to do is shoot him in the face and the problem solved. Although he kind of got shot in the face.
Shoot RoboCop in the face?
Yeah, he gets right in the jaw and, kill the brain, which I guess
your jaw's not your brain's not in your jaw.
You put a jaw, no, but
you put a jaw in your brain.
That's what would end up happening. But that's my reasoning is because Terminator is a robot wrapped in meat, not the other way around.
I think it's RoboCop. I mean, I love both franchises. I love both sequels. T-800 versus RoboCop. I mean, the SNES game, you play as RoboCop, you definitely have to beat Terminator to end the game. So it's clear. It's RoboCop.
I didn't realize we're taking SNES rules into the equation.
Yeah, I mean, the story has already been written. Why would you rewrite it? Perfect.
You know what? Tell that to Rob Zombie when he remakes Jaws.
We've already established Rob Zombie has no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah. I bet the Jersey Devil's a Rob Zombie fan. So, but that's all we got.
That's a different one. This is a different guy. This is the monster. I don't like this guy because I can't really understand him quite as well as you can understand this guy. He's much more articulate.
So, as we exit the weekly segment of the Dewey Pod Monster podcast and slowly divulge into what might become Late Night with the Devil, I don't know how this is going. No, that was last week. Anyway, thank you for listening to us and putting up with our bullshittery. If you would like more of our bullshit, you could find us at crap.town. That is our site. You can also find us at yourunpodcast.com. And we are on all the social medias at Dewey Pod Monster. That's the best place, one of the best places to interact with us. But shout us out, yell at us. Tell us who you think would win in a fight, RoboCop or Terminator. If you somehow missed the question of the week, you can still yell at us on the back end. That's fine. Let us know. And Sean, what am I forgetting about? What am I missing? Tell me. Tell people to do more shit.
I think the listens to the episodes will determine who the winner is. But if you're interested in answering the question of the week, you can have your answer to the question of the week answered on this show, questioned on the show, something on the show. If you follow us on social media, we post our questions every week on that there thing at Dewey Pod Monster on social media. If you want to vote on our polls, if you want to click on the links that we put in here, it'd be greatly appreciated. We put links to all the shit that we talk about in the show notes, if that makes sense. Hopefully it makes sense. And if you want to follow my craft beer adventures, you can find me at youtube.drafttherapy.com or on all the social media networks at Draft Therapy.
Yep. All right. So until next week, we will be back like Arnold. He says that in this movie. He? We'll be back. He says, I'll be back.
Oh.
Now
cool.
The royal we will be back, and we'll talk about some other shit. This movie's not shit, but we'll talk about something that might or might not be. I don't know what we're doing next week yet. So come back next week and find out. Have a good week. Cheers.
It's a little bit more drawn out, isn't it? It's not quite a...
Oh, yeah.
It's not a goddamn. It's
goddamn.
It introduced me to the concept of the pine. Jesus Christ. I love the action / Jesus Christ.